This is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaughan's cricket show.
Well, England very much on top already in the first test against Sri Lanka, but gifted to them somewhat by some awful batting, Michael Vaughan.
Yeah, England were outstanding, a fantastic day, but that's not test match batting, Ellie. That was absolutely pathetic.
Fifer for Don Best, but again, helped out a little bit by a bit of luck and a bit of help from the opposition, Tuffers.
Yes, well, he came out after the game and said he didn't bowl great, to his credit. He didn't have to do that. I would have been saying it was all part of a wicked plan. But Fifer's Fifer, happy days, look in the book.
Plus, England did have one fan serenading them onto the field. He's told us he's gone for a bit of a lie down to get over his sunstroke. So fingers crossed he wakes up to speak to us a bit later in the show. We want to hear your takes from the first day as well. Your thoughts are always interesting to us. Texts charged at standard rate on 85058 or at 5 Live Sport across social.
Tuffers and Vaughan's cricket show
On 5 Live.
Well, we've got 2 hours of football from 8. Steve Crossman on the latest Arsenal youngster to break through as they take on Crystal Palace, and we'll have updates from the Emirates from 8 and in Euroleagues from 9. Plenty on the title race in Italy, but we're talking cricket for the next hour, and a really poor batting day for Sri Lanka means England are thoroughly in control going into day 2 of the first test. Sri Lanka won the toss. We're all out for 135. England closed on 127 for 2, so just 8 runs behind. And a third wicket stand of 110 between Root and Bairstow to resume in the early hours of the morning. 4:15 on 5 Live Sports Extra. We'll talk about all of that. We'll discuss the latest Steve Smith and Tim Payne controversies down under before 8 o'clock. But first, 4:15 in the morning. What time did your alarms go off, boys?
10 past 3, me.
Yeah,
10 past 3, I was in my car at 4:15. It's quite therapeutic driving around Cheshire and through to Manchester to meet. Yeah, I found it quite therapeutic. There's no one on the roads. It's a bit bizarre. It's like there's no one around. You keep to the speed limits and you get to Media City. And I was walking by Simon Mann. It was lovely. It was just me and Simon in the Strictly Come Dancing production room. We sat and commentated all day in there. It was rather nice.
Did you break out a Paso Doble, Mike?
I certainly did not. I didn't break out into one of those when I did the show, Phil.
You were in there with Simon Mann, and suddenly a Paso Doble broke out. The image is marvellous. Tuffers, how about you? So Vaughan, you were in Media City. Tuffers, you were in our commentary box at the Oval, which is kind of slightly bizarre that when it's pitch dark outside.
And absolutely poured with rain all evening. But I must admit, I was like a kid at Christmas this morning, even though it was a bit of an early start. Really looking forward to the day, and what a day we had. I mean, it was just full of everything, wasn't it? An
Phil,
amazing
who's there? Who's at the Oval at 3:30 to let you in?
Not many people. I had
Did
to
you
give
have to whack on the door?
I did. Some fella was having a little snooze and a cup of soup, and I've given him a little nudge, and he's let me in. But yeah, all a little bit surreal. But wasn't it great? And didn't we do well to manage to get that on and get it away? It was fantastic, and I think everyone appreciates all the hard work as well.
Absolutely. We had so many lovely comments about TMS, the TMS coverage, and I was on 5 Live as well. I only had to go from my bed, which is basically just there, to my desk via the shower and a cup of tea. But I got my breakfast strategy all wrong. I've got to say this, because banana first thing, so first session banana, poached egg at the lunch interval. I should have gone bigger because I was running out of energy by the end of the final session of the day. So I was starving when I came off air. But having breakfast at lunchtime, it's just kind of a bit, it messes with your head a bit, doesn't it?
Ellie, the most bizarre thing for me is that at 4:15, when I was asked to do the first 15 minutes, the kind of build up to the game. And we're all on Zoom, and you can see everyone on Zoom. And all of a sudden, Jonathan Agnew from the Vale in the Beaver is on screen in a Hugh Hefner dressing gown.
He was like you. He was.
I mean, if there was ever a worse vision of a commentator for cricket, of Jonathan Agnew looking like Hugh Hefner, I mean, I had to kind of just get rid of him off my Zoom. I was like, I can't watch that.
He slowly got dressed throughout the day, didn't he? You could see the different stages of it, but it was great fun, and looking forward to another great day. As I say, England just showed what you could do with a little bit of application and getting your head down, getting a partnership going and getting that rhythm of batting on tricky-ish pitches. It wasn't a minefield, but a great partnership between Bairstow and Root put England in the box seat.
Well, in a way, England gave Sri Lanka a batting lesson in Sri Lankan conditions, didn't they? I mean, it sounds arrogant to say it, but I mean, Vaughan, you said this, and actually I heard you on the TMS podcast with Russell Arnold, who clearly was thinking, oh, God, that's one of the worst days of Sri Lankan cricket he has seen, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to try and be fair, and you kind of put everything into the equation. It's not easy for any sports person in this kind of year because they're in these bio bubbles, so you have to be fair. It's not normal. But let's be honest, Sri Lanka have just played 2 test matches in South Africa. All right, different conditions, up against pace and bounce in South Africa. They come back home, but they're back home, you know, they know their own conditions. England have arrived there having played no cricket. They've had one day in Hambantota. The next day, the second day, which was meant to be the second day of the warm-up game, was washed out. So they've had no practice whatsoever. They've been practicing in a tent at Loughborough, and England applied themselves, you know, because they had the right mindset. They look like they're onto something, this England Test match team. I'm not saying they're onto something that they're going to be the best Test match team in the world in the next year or so, but I think over the last year and a half, we've seen that the Test match team has just steadily started to get better and better and play Test match cricket the right way. What we saw from Sri Lanka today, it was really disappointing. You know, it was appalling play. Because sometimes you can get bowled out and the conditions are completely against you. You get a bit unfortunate and you get up against the likes of Bumrah or Cummins, Stuart Broad, or Jimmy Anderson, Ravi Ashwin, where everything's in the bowler's favour. You go, well, it's very difficult. Today was not that day. It was not that difficult. The ball didn't swing, it didn't seem. Stuart Broad got 3 for. There was a hint of spin there, but it's finger spin from Don Bess and Jack Leach. It's not mystery. And it only just spun a little bit, and it was slowly. These are the kind of conditions that I would expect a Sri Lankan team, where all their weight is in their batting in terms of their experience. The bowling attack has no experience, so it is down to the Sri Lankan batting unit to kind of set the tone for the team, because that's where all the experience is. And they were appalling. Some of those dismissals were, I mean, I think Simon Mann on commentary, you know, it was like club cricket. I thought it was disrespectful for club cricket to be even. There was the long hot that was hit to backward point. 2 players out reverse sweeping the ball inside the first 45 overs of Test match cricket. Not good enough. Poor from Sri Lanka. I think Mickey Arthur, coach, will be, whatever bit of hair he's got left, it'll be gone by now. Certainly won't see that tomorrow morning. You know, it's just not good enough. And, you know, England are a better team. On paper, they are a better team, but you just expect better application from Test match players. It was really poor.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about some of the shots. I mean, Pereira, a very dangerous player, the left-hander. Second ball, he faces Don Bess. I think it was the scrambled brainness of it that struck me. Okay, as Mike said, sometimes you can whack a long hop straight to someone, or, you know, drive one and nick off a decent delivery and what have you. But, you know, Matthews and Chandimal, just getting them sort of like back into the game a little bit. Matthews has a waft outside, the off stump goes. 2 balls later, the captain has a wild whack, a little floaty one outside off stump by Jack Leach. He'd already been dropped and over beforehand playing that shot, and just goes straight to it. So you've got your 2 experienced guys go in 2 deliveries, 2 guys on naught, and it just as a bowling side gives you that impetus that something's going to happen. We haven't got to do anything fancy here. We haven't got to do anything funky or out of this world, but they will give us chances. And that's a lovely place to be as a bowling side, because it just keeps you going, keeps you moving forward, and it gains that momentum.
Let's hear from England's man of the day, Don Bess, 5 for 30 today. Not what he would have expected after England lost the toss.
It was really bizarre. Like I said, it's been a really funny one, because in terms of preparation and all that as well, we've obviously had quite a lot of rain out here and things like that. I don't know, it's been a really strange one, mate, to be honest. Again, we've put ourselves in a very good position. I think Ruti and Johnny batted very well there, because the wicket is obviously starting to spin.
So let's talk about this 5 for then. How do you assess it? If you're sitting here watching off the telly or watching in the stands, how do you feel that went today?
I didn't feel like I bowled very well, actually, to be honest, and I struggled. I was actually quite nervous. I didn't feel like I bowled a lot of overs before this, so I hadn't bowled since the Test matches last summer. In terms of a game, I didn't really play for Somerset, so I was pretty nervous. And there was obviously that short, rubbish one that got cut. But again, Ruti and even Dan Lawrence said you're going to bowl plenty of good ones in terms of not taking poles. So you got to take. I guess you got to take it when it comes.
I think it's incredibly honest of you. I mean, it's not everyone who comes on, gets 5 for 30 and said that I didn't bowl very well.
Well, I didn't feel I bowled as well as I probably know I can. And like I said, that's cricket, isn't it? So you take it when it comes, and there might be days where I bowl exceptionally well and I go 1 for 100. You guys will know it's cricket.
What about Shanaka, that sweep into Johnny Bairstow's boots?
Again, do you know what? That's just luck. He's absolutely smoked it, and it's hit him square in the boot, and it's gone back to Butler. Like, when does that? I was laughing to Leachy. I was saying, when does that ever happen? And now it does. So, I guess you got to take the good fortune, because I know there'll be times where people will drop catches and there'll be, say, missed stumpings, things like that. Like, that will happen. So I did have to go over to Johnny and just apologise that he swept it. Well, I thought it was actually quite a good ball. He just middled it, and yeah, Johnny being Johnny just took it, and yeah, we took the pole.
Let's just mention Stuart Broad's bowling there, because he really set things up, didn't he?
Yeah, he was exceptional today, actually. I think he was a real standout. Him and Sammy to sort of set the tone as a seamers was phenomenal. I just think he's so good, and he's got so much experience within it. And in terms of like leading the attack, obviously the spinners are looking to lead the attack, but with his and obviously Jimmy's experience around the group, they're so good at really involving everyone and actually making it a team. Do you know what I mean? It's a team effort, it's a bowling unit. And the way he delivered his skills today was phenomenal.
Well, also, it'll be a cheerful bubble tonight, won't it?
Yeah, it will be. I think the lighthouse will be, there'll be some happy people floating around there.
A very bubbly Dom Best talking to Aggers and you, Vaughnie, as well. And we should actually make the point, shouldn't we, here that Aggers is kind of asking him politely what he made of his own bowling performance. A couple of seconds beforehand, as he was putting his headphones on, I think you'd been not entirely complimentary about his bowling performance.
Well, to be honest, I didn't know he was listening.
Oh dear, has he overheard you, Mike?
No. I was saying that I'd be very interested to see what he says, because he didn't bowl great. He didn't put 2 in the right spot. He bowled 2 straight to the right-handers. He's mentioned the long hop to get rid of Pereira. He kind of just, and rightfully so. He said he hasn't played any cricket, so you've got to expect that these guys aren't going to be completely consistent over the next 2 weeks, and by the time they get to India in a few weeks' time, you would expect them to get better and better in terms of consistency. But I like his attitude. Whether it was that he'd listened, I'm not too sure. I've heard Dominic Best speak before, and he's always been dead honest. He's just one of those kind of characters. We've seen him play for Somerset, for England, for Yorkshire, and every dressing room that he's been in. I have people that I can speak to about these younger players, and everyone says about Dom Best, he's a great kid. He's just there for the team, always dead honest. He offers, obviously, his off spin, but with the bat in hand, he's very dangerous, and he's brilliant in the field. So he's the kind of player that I look at, that I hope in time he'll have to bowl better than he did today when he gets to Virat and co. If he bowls like he did today to Virat, I think he might be probably getting taken off quite quickly, and he'll know that. But I like honesty in a younger player, and I think he's got the right kind of character. So when time needs that, he needs a bit of fortune, I hope he gets it.
Yeah, it's one of those days where you just take it as a bowler. You're gonna bowl well, and you're gonna get no sort of just desserts for your spells. As he said, you're going to bowl well and have a couple of catches drop, go for 1 for 100. So one of those days, as cricketers, that you just sit there and go, lap it up. What
I liked about him, Phil, he got Dulru and Pereira out second ball, their number 9. It was just a full length of lip, didn't do anything, and you could see him get the wicket, and you could see him talking to some of the players. He went, "How's he missed that?" It was just a full straight delivery.
I think that's why England like him, though, isn't it? England like him because of that sort of honesty, and he works hard, and then it's just one of those days that you go, "Thank you very much."
And as he came off at the end of the innings with the ball in his hand, and he was kind of showing it to the dressing room. You'd normally show it to the Barmy Army, wouldn't you? But show it to the dressing room. But he looked a bit apologetic, didn't he? So Phil, have you had days when that your figures have looked great and you've thought, oh no, I've stunk the place out here, really?
Well, not really. I must admit, I haven't had a fiver like that. But as you say, you just sit there and you go, listen, that is the game. That's cricket. You can get I don't necessarily, Mike will be able to know this a little bit more, whether you can get a scratchy ton. But I mean, you can get an awkward, you can get a sort of an awkward 50 or a bit of a lucky 50 or something like that at Test match cricket, and think to yourself, it's just one of those things. As you say, it did look a little bit apologetic, but listen, no one will care. In a couple of years' time, that ball will be on the mantelpiece with Sri Lanka 5 for 30, and everyone will be going fantastically. I saw that. What a beautiful spell of bowling. Yeah, don't be too apologetic. Never be apologetic for getting wickets. No, it's as simple as that. You've got to bowl it, otherwise you don't get anyone out.
Let's talk about the batting, shall we? A quick word. I mean, we should talk about Joe Root. It's very satisfying, this. Root, 66. Not out overnight. Bairstow's on 47, 110 between the two of them for the third wicket so far. They batted really well, the two of them, didn't they? And Joe Root hasn't had a century for a year. Johnny Bairstow hasn't played Test cricket for a year. So what do you make of it, Michael?
Fantastic. It was Test match cricket. Played the right way. They just realised it's never easy. Even though the opponents aren't great, it's never easy those first 20, 30 balls when it's just offering a little bit of spin, because you've got to be so decisive in your foot movement. You've got to get right forward to the full of length, and you've got to get right back to anything that's slightly short, and you've just got to rotate the strike. And I thought they did that very well. And as they got in, they obviously brought a few boundary options. They played the sweep nicely, the cut shot. And what I liked about it, and I hope Zach Crawley's watching those two play, when you play against that kind of attack, you don't have to gamble too much. You don't have to play a high-risk shot. And what Zach Crawley did, he tried to dance down. It's one of his shots, and he tried to hit it over the top. It's easy to play that shot in English condition when the ball just skids onto the bat that little bit more so. In Sri Lanka and in the subcontinent, it just grabs in the surface a little bit. And if you see Zach Crawley when he danced down, it just comes off the bottom of the bat because of the nature of the bounce. Now, if he'd have sat in the dressing room, just watched Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow, what they did is just went, right, this attack has got no real threat to us. There's nothing that really should concern you as a batter. There's no mystery, there's no express pace. So just play the low risk, then you can kind of go into the medium risk shots, but you don't ever have to go to the high risk against this kind of attack, because there will be a spell where the bad balls will come, the field will spread, and it'll get easier and easier. And I thought that's exactly what the senior pair did. They just realised, just hang in. And as we got to the later end of the day, Sri Lanka looked a bit tired and they started to bowl more bad balls. You've got to remember, the Sri Lankan attack has got no experience. All their experience is in the batting. And I think the experienced pair from England realised that and thought, just bat for an hour and it'll get easier and easier. And that's exactly what happened.
So the openers go in single figures, Phil. I think Sibley got 4, didn't he? And Crawley got 9. So yeah. Dan Lawrence handed his cap by James Foster, and Chris Silverwood, his former coach at Essex, watching on as well. What a moment for him. Then he's paddying up in a bit of a panic, sitting there, waiting to go out, and he has to sit there for a couple of hours. So I wonder how he was feeling sitting up there waiting to make his debut in Test cricket.
Well, he'll be nervous. Dropped a catch as well, didn't he? Pretty straightforward catch at extra cover, so that would have been playing on his mind. But you just get, Mike would probably know a little bit more than me, you just get into that zone. It's coming round to your turn, you get your pads on, you're in that sort of tunnel vision, you're concentrating on the game, you're getting yourself psyched up mentally for it. Okay, if partnerships develop, you have to then cope with that, but batsmen sort of know what that's all about. But he'll be nervous, but I'm looking forward to seeing him, actually, because he's a very positive kind of guy, very positive with the bat, and I think he'll be encouraged to be like that by this England side as well. I don't think they'll be saying, come on now, look to play Test cricket. You're going in sort of like 5 or 6 down the order. Hopefully they'll have a few runs on the board for you. Get yourself in, as Mike was saying, get yourself to 20 and then go and show us what you can do. He's a very attacking kind of guy, great white ball cricketer as well. So a real sort of like prospect for England coming in that middle order. Looking forward to seeing how he copes with it tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, Phil, one of the advantages that Dan Lawrence has is obviously the game situation. England are well on top. But also, you look at the Sri Lankan attack, you go back 15, 20 years ago, you'd have been facing Muralitharan, which, you just don't get to face that in county cricket. A few years ago, around a Raraf, which is a wonderful left-arm spinner, who did have the doosra as well, whereas this Sri Lankan attack, it's pretty much what you get day in, day out as a batter growing up. There's an off spinner, there's a left-arm spinner. The leg spinner looks a little bit of a threat when he gets the right length, but his googly looks like it's quite an easy one to pick because he drops that left shoulder very early. So there's nothing in this attack that Dan wouldn't have faced before. Sometimes when you play Test cricket, you start facing bowlers that really, at the pace, you've not faced that in county cricket. Well, they don't have that. You're facing world-class spinners that, you don't get in county cricket that often, and he wouldn't have faced. Where this attack, all he has to play is the nerves and the pressure, and it's just the 3 lines on the chest. That's the only difference. And ultimately, you always say, oh, yeah, but there's a big crowd as well. I think it's actually harder for a young player like Dan, that he's got no family there's no crowd. I actually feel sorry for him that he's making his debut in such strange surroundings. They've had no real practice, had one day, and then all of a sudden he's playing Test match cricket. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play because I think he's a bit different. He plays quite an extravagant game, particularly on that leg side, which is great. There's been some great leg-sided players for England over the last 15 years, Kevin Peterson, Jonathan Trott, and he'll just be, I'm pretty sure, by this England management, told to just go and play his way. Whatever his way has been to get to where he's got him to, continue to do so and see how it takes him in Test cricket.
Yeah, but just get yourself to 20 or 30.
Oh, yeah.
Get yourself to 20 or 30. That's what the 2 openers, as you say, didn't do, and they'll be sitting there kicking themselves because there is runs there in this pitch.
Phil, what do you see? Can I ask you a question? As a left-arm spinner, Dom Sibley. If you're bowling to him, what are you seeing?
Well, I'm bowling just outside the off stump to try and get him to hit it through the offside because he's going to find that a problem with his grip, and he sets himself up to play that leg side and then just bowled a little floaty one a little bit straighter. Make him try and hit it into the leg side and get out how he did, that leading edge. He's got to find a way. If someone packs the offside field and bowls that 5th or 6th stump, outside off stump, just looking him to sort of hit into that offside area, he's got to find a way of getting runs through there. Perhaps a sweep, perhaps a slog sweep or something like that. But at the moment, I wouldn't mind bowling to him on a pitch like this, I must admit.
Yeah, and do you know the advice I'd give him? Because, there's so many England players that are going to be coming back, Ben Stokes, Rory Burns, Ollie Pope, and who's to say that, this batting lineup is going to look completely different in 2 Test matches time in India. If Johnny Bairstow gets 100, you'd expect him to keep his position, and it may be that Dom Sibley might be that one player that might be left out in a few games' time if he doesn't get some runs quite quickly in subcontinent conditions. My advice is to him, make sure if you can, get some runs to stay in the side. But if not, make sure when you're in the subcontinent, get in the nets as many times as you possibly can and try and just face. It's difficult in this era again because I don't think they're allowed to have net bowlers from in Sri Lanka. But try and get in the nets. You've got Jack Callis, the batting coach. Just work with Jack Callis to try and improve your technique slightly because there is something that I see and think, wait a minute, there's a vulnerability there with his movements. It's all the hands going away from his body and he doesn't look controlled. And, he's been out a lot to spin now. In his short Test career, spinners have had him a little bit. So there's just an area that he just needs to improve.
Especially left arm spin. That's going to be his slight thing that he needs to work on.
Well, look, no fans are allowed inside the ground. No journalists, of course, as we know. That's why we're all in our various homes and studios in this country. But as the England team got underway in Gaul, as the first ball was about to be bowled, they might have just caught a few bars of this wafting from through the air. Well, I think we need to know that's pretty decent actually. We might need to work on the words a little bit, but on the fort, just close to the ground, was Rob Lewis, aka DJ Randy Caddick. 10 months after arriving in Sri Lanka to watch England, finally achieved his goal. Good evening to you, Rob.
Good evening, guys. You all right?
Hello, Rob. How are you, mate?
All right, Randy.
I'm good.
How long did you last? How long? Look, we saw your flag early, and we saw.
Yeah.
How long did you last?
Not long at all. Me and my friend spent 2 hours putting these 3 banners up. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And then the police came and said you can't be here after 10, which is the start of the game. I managed to persuade him to let me sing Jerusalem, which he once I started shouting rather than singing. He was on my case to get me down, so he wasn't too happy about that. But yeah, it was the most magical moment on reflection. It was just incredible trying to being the only man on the fort singing Jerusalem to England was just don't know, it's weird, it's surreal.
Yeah, I know the Barmy Army love you. I mean, they really love you, Rob. But how about the players? Any reaction from any of them? Do you know? Did they hear you?
Well, one of my banners was for a good friend of mine, Deco, who hasn't missed an England away test for 10 years. He's been to 93 tests. It's insane. So this is the first one he's missed in a very long while, and he's stuck at home. So I had a banner dedicated to him, and he texted me because he knows a few of the players, and he said Stuart Broad and Mark Wood saw the banner and they loved it and were inspired by it, which kind of means the world.
So you were allowed in for the starter play, and they let you do a few bars of Jerusalem, and then they moved. You got slung out, did you?
Yeah, that was the peak of the day at 10 a.m. So it was amazing up until then. Then they kicked me off the fort. Then we had to go to the police station to try and ask permission to us on the fort, but that didn't work out. Then we got back and found our banners had been taken down, so that was truly heartbreaking. And then I found somewhere to watch through a fence on the far side near the main pavilion for half of the second session, which was all right. There was a few locals sort of milling around watching it with me. So the police didn't help. In the final session, I kind of took matters into my own hands. Went home and got changed and put a hard hat and high vis jacket on. I swear, there's workers on the fort, right? And snuck on the fort. This is true. And then the police caught me. And they said, "Why are you wearing that?" And I went, "I'm on a work site, safety first." And they started laughing and went, "You really want to watch the cricket, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, mate, I do." And I said, "All right, you've got half an hour," but luckily, he let me watch the whole final session from on top of the fort. So yeah, it was a nice end to the day.
Oh, Rob, we thought we had to work hard to watch the cricket, but you have done a brilliant job. You're the man of the day, I think, from an England point of view.
Thank you very much.
You said your ambition, having flown out there for the series that was called off at the beginning of last year. You said you were going to stay there till you watched England play. You've been working, you've been doing things to keep there and keep on the beach. What are the plans now? Are you going to come home?
I don't really fancy coming home to Tier 5. I'll be totally honest with you.
Don't blame me, mate.
You can't blame me for that. So that was the plan. After the cricket was to come home, but I've got a visa until March. It's not really a time to make plans at all. So just gonna see how it goes.
Rob, you are a legend. That's all we can say. Thank you very much for joining us as well, and for getting out of your bed as well. It's quite late in Sri Lanka now. So that is Rob Lewis.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Well done,
AKA DJ Randy Caddick is his DJ name, who was there on the fort, as he said he would be, watching England in that first day of the first Test match.
He'll be back tomorrow. He'll be back tomorrow with his fizz jacket on.
He'll come in going, that looks a bit wonky. No, I'm here doing a survey. I'm here health and safety.
I'm here to give a quote.
Yes, that's right.
And from 11:30 tonight on 5 Live Sports Extra, we've commentary of day one of Australia's fourth and deciding test against India. Now, the first 3 test matches in the series have given us so much, both on the pitch and off it. So I want to talk about that between now and 8 o'clock. Michael Vaughan, Phil Tufnell are still with us. And it's a very good morning in Australia to Jeff Lemon, Australian cricket writer and commentator. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning from Brisbane, Ellie.
Lovely to talk to you. Lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much for getting up early for us. Actually, while we're in the theme of getting up early. What time is it with you, and are you wearing your dressing gown?
I am still wearing pyjamas of a sort and wandering around outside the apartment so I don't wake up a baby. But it's 5:30 in the morning over here. The sun is coming up, but, spending time with you lot is as beautiful as a sunrise.
Oh, well, bless you for saying that. Look, lots of things to talk about that aren't about the action, but let's talk about what has actually happened in this Border Gavaskar Trophy series, because there's been so much to appreciate, hasn't there?
Well, it's been an absolute belter, and I suppose if you look back over the last 20 years or so, Australia and India haven't really played a bad test series, and this one's lived up to it. We saw India get absolutely demolished in Adelaide and get bowled out for 36, and then somehow come back to win in Melbourne, which nobody was expecting, and then hang on for a really historic draw in Sydney, one of their longest ever batting performances away from home in the fourth innings. So they've lost about 11 players out of their best 11, the Indian team, but they just keep hanging in there, and the Australians are trying to go with them to see if they can finish this off at the Gabba, with that being the last test of the series rather than the first. So there's so much interest, I think, in this fourth test match.
Well, look, the series has given us allegations, hasn't it? I mean, away from the great cricket, allegations of racial abuse in the crowd, claims that Steve Smith scuffed the crease. We'll talk about that in a second. The sledging of Ravichandran Ashwin by Tim Payne. And that's the first thing that Justin Langer reacted to when he spoke to Alison Mitchell for the BBC podcast Stumped.
I'd like to think that Tim Payne's got a few credits in the bank. I mean, he's hardly stepped a hair out of place in the last 3 years. He's been exemplary in everything he's done. He had a frustrating day. He is human. I was incredibly surprised about the Steve Smith stuff, though. I found that anyone who knows Steve Smith, as we do, we've joked about it for the last couple of years, how he's a bit different and he's a bit weird with what he does with his batting stuff. Whether he's in the shower, whether he's in his bedroom, he's shadow batting all the time. So he's standing on the crease in his own little world, his own little Steve Smith world. And then some of the criticism I heard from him, I mean, I thought it was, that was way out of line. He was he was 100% innocent in what he did. And I thought some of the critics and some of the comments were out of line. And some of the comments, I said he was out on the wicket, scratching the wicket for the spinners. Like, give me a break. I've never heard so much rubbish in my life. Steve Smith, in the last 2 years, since he came back, like Tim Payne, has been exemplary in everything he's done. He has shown absolutely, we saw it through England last year, where the abuse that he was like horrible, and he just kept smiling, he kept batting, he got a standing ovation in his last innings at the Oval. From where that came in, this kid has been through, he had a year's suspension from the game. He's come back, and now for people to pour on him again for something as innocent as this, my gosh, I feel for him.
As regards Tim Payne then and his leadership, and bearing in mind that what you've just spoken about it, has his leadership, do you think in any way, his leadership credentials been damaged by this episode?
No, I hope not. Not for 1 millisecond. The critics can talk, Mark, and have their opinion as they like. Tim Payne, I've said it all series, I've said it for the last 12 months, I've said it for the last 2 years. He is an outstanding captain. He's probably our most important player in the team. He's an outstanding leader. He's an outstanding person. He's the best wicket keeper in the world, who had a bad day the other day. So, my gosh, he sets himself incredibly high standards. No, and it shouldn't either.
And is he the man that you want to have in charge come what will be a huge series for the Ashes in 10 months' time?
Yes, 100%.
Well, that was Justin Langer. You can hear the full interview, a very impassioned Justin Langer talking to Alison Mitchell. That's on the Stumped podcast. You can download that via BBC Sounds. Now, where do we start with this? Let's park the Tim Payne is the best wicketkeeper in the world question. That's for another day, I suspect.
I could feel the steam coming out of JL's ears there. It was rising and rising.
Can I just get... This is the guy that walks around the ground with shoes and socks on. It's to find zen, isn't it? Where's zen in that interview?
Yeah, you could do a little bit of barefoot walking, I think. Now, Jeff, I know your view on this because I've listened to your excellent Final Word podcast with Adam Collins. I've read your piece in The Guardian. Vaughanie, you kind of launched into this a little bit on social media a couple of days ago because Virender Sehwag tweeted about Steve Smith, didn't he? And accused him of trying to kind of tamper with the crease, to try and put Rishabh Pant off by scratching the crease. So I'm going to let the two of you talk to each other.
Well, first and foremost, Ellie, I'm amazed I've been dragged into it. I wasn't really. Usually I'm very opinionated, but I was very placid in my approach to this one. I said he was stupid. Yes, he was. Silly. Yes, he was. It looked poor. Yes, it did. You know, you're Steve Smith on the back of... You know, the eye's on you all the time now, whether Steve likes it or not, whether Australian cricket likes it or not. From what happened in Cape Town, Steve Smith will have cameras on him all the time. And for what he did on the last day, bearing in mind he's a right-hander, to go into the crease as a left-hander and scratch your guard, let's forget that it's actually against the laws of the game. He was just silly and stupid. You know, that's exactly what I thought. I don't think it's cheating. I don't think it affected the game. I don't think it affected play. And that's where I would have left it if I was Australia, to kind of throw more fuel onto the fire. And that interview from Justin Langer, he's in his right to defend his players. And I guess me being an ex-captain, I would defend my players. But there comes a time where you don't need to add more fuel to the fire. And I just think they've done that over the last 2 days.
Yeah, I guess I would be looking at it from the perspective of someone who's not involved. And it's interesting how these kind of things fall along parochial lines where anybody Australian talking about it gets accused of just saying a certain line because we're Australians or whatever it is. And you sort of have to point out, like, I've written fairly critical books about Australian cricket. I don't really need to come in and defend them. But to me, the framing of this issue was the thing that didn't make sense, because it's Virender Sehwag who puts it up saying Steve Smith is scratching out a batsman's guard at the crease. And so everybody responds as if that's the case, which in a way is fair enough, but they haven't actually looked at the footage, which doesn't actually show what it's claiming to show, because you would know on the last day of a test, Vaughanie, that those guards are scratched an inch deep into the surface. You've had dozens of batsmen coming through playing over the previous 5 days. It's the last day of a pitch in Australia where the wicket is really hard, and you can't get rid of a guard on the crease with your boot. It's impossible. You would need to get a shovel out or the groundsman's sledgehammer to be able to try to get rid of those batting guards. So if you look at the video, the guards are still there. They're completely unmarked, and what Steve Smith does is actually increase one of the guards. He remarks the centre guard like every other player has done. It's happening at the drinks break. So Rishabh Pant comes in and remarks his guard after drinks, as just about any batsman would do after a drinks break. So the whole premise of what was shown in the video was nonsense, and it was done for internet likes and attention, which is what Virender Sehwag wanted, and that's what he's got, because we're still talking about it some days later. So to me, the whole thing just seems like nonsense.
We've also got to look. Steve Smith's under the scrutiny of every single camera.
Yeah.
Now, when I hear that people say that he does it all the time, I've seen lots of players do it. So the first innings of the Test match, England are batting. I see lots of players that are going to be batting in the second innings. Australia would go and mirror their kind of stance and just have a look at the pitch, visualisation. Just have a look. I've seen players doing it when they may have to bat in the last innings of the game. So the third innings of the match, England are batting, odds are going to chase something. You go and visualise. I've not seen a player do it the wrong hand. So Steve Smith's right-handed. I've never seen someone do it left-handed on the fourth innings of a match, the last day of the game, when he's not going to have to bat again. So that's, from Australia, fine, it absolutely protects him. And I just wonder whether there's a little bit of protection going on because they want him back as the captain, and I completely get that. But what Australia has to understand is, and all the people protecting him, for the rest of the world watching, it didn't look right. It didn't look good. And we're all in our right to say, wait a minute, that's not right, that's silly. And I just think Australia would have been better to come out and say, look, we've looked at it, we've actually looked at the laws of the game, and what he did is against the laws of the game, and let's just move forward.
Is it against the laws of the game?
Yes, it is against the laws of the game, yeah. I mean, I've got the laws of the game here. It says fielder damage in the pitch, 41.12.1. It is unfair to cause deliberate or avoidable damage to the pitch. A fielder will be deemed to be causing avoidable damage if either umpire considers that his or her presence on the pitch is without reasonable cause. What's Steve Smith doing on the pitch on the last day?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so he's against whatever he's been doing in the past year. And I'll be totally honest, I did not know the laws of the game until it was sent to me by the MCC 2 days ago. So I would have done a similar thing, but not on the last innings of the match when you're not going to have to bat again. So it didn't look great for Steve Smith. It didn't look great for Australian cricket. And I think they've just thrown fuel onto the fire. They could have put this to bed very easily 2 or 3 days ago.
I think a couple of things with that. Well, one is that Steve Smith probably shouldn't captain Australia again, and that he does deserve to have extra scrutiny on him. That is always going to be the case for the rest of his career, and I don't think he can complain about that at all. But I think that still means that when that scrutiny comes, it still has to have something to scrutinise. The laws about damaging the pitch are about damaging the area of the pitch that's going to be bowled on. Both the umpires are out there.
The pitches are stumps to the stumps, Jeff.
Yeah, but both the opposing batsmen are out there and didn't raise a complaint. Both the umpires are out there and didn't say a thing. So
because they didn't see it because it was at drinks.
But are you saying both umpires and both batsmen didn't glance over at the pitch during the entire drinks break? It doesn't seem very plausible. But
I'm just saying you've got to look at it from a layman's perspective, that it's not a great look, and you can't protect all the time this great player. I've described him as the greatest Test player I've ever seen. And it's just a bad look for Australian cricket and for him.
Well, he's probably been warned off doing it again, and he probably won't because, why would he want to go through it again? But I think I can understand why a player who knows his team's bowling to a left-hander is going to stand left-handed to look at what that player's going to be facing to work out how to bowl to him. I mean, this was happening relatively early in the day before Australia were worried about not winning that Test match. It wasn't like it was happening in the last hour when, tensions were running high. And it does make some sense to me that he would try to work out what a left-hander would be looking at, and he's absent-mindedly marked his guard because that's what he does, like the way that someone flicks the light switch on and off before they leave a room or whatever it is. He's got strange habits, and that's what he did. But, I've been very happy to be critical of Smith for all kinds of things that he deserves, but this one, I think, was blown up out of nothing.
Jeff, do you think that a lot of this is sort of frustration that Australia haven't been able to finish off India during this series?
I think Tim Paine's episode certainly was. I mean, and you could tell that was palpable because generally he's been pretty calm, and that stood out because it wasn't the way that he usually behaves. And I think he deserved to get whacked for it, and he has been. And I think it's to his credit that he's accepted that and apologised and didn't come out and give a sort of half-hearted apology where he said, if I've offended anyone, I'm sorry. He came out and said, that's not good enough and I'm disappointed in myself and I apologise. So that means something. It might not mean everything to everybody, but it was very obvious on the day that he was afraid of letting another Test win slip. He's had that experience at Headingley. You could tell that he was getting really anxious about that, and that's why the catches were going down, and that's why he started losing his rag at an Indian batsman, which shouldn't have happened, and it was pretty embarrassing when it did.
I mean, but you can understand that. You can understand that.
Yeah,
from the skipper.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, how do you think Tim Paine will react to someone like Sonny Gaviskar? I mean, he's wrote quite a strong piece this week saying that this will be his last Test match in Brisbane. I don't know whether Sonny's got the word in on the Aussie selectors. I'm not sure, but it was a strong piece, basically saying he was useless. I mean, I thought that was a bit over the top.
Yeah, it's an interesting one from a player who wasn't afraid to, remonstrate and threaten to march off the ground and all the rest of it when things didn't go his way on the field. So I guess a lot of the time you have people whose job it is to say something and have an opinion, and Sonny Gavaskar's been flown out to Australia and done his quarantine and all the rest of it so that he can be there and have opinions. So I suppose he felt that that's what he had to do, and away he went.
The question of Tim Paine. So just to kind of break this down, we saw a day, didn't we, when there were some ugly scenes. Well, I say ugly scenes, but there were accusations of racist abuse of a young Indian player, Mohammad Siraj, from the crowd at Sydney. And then we had Tim Paine saying some pretty fruity things to Ravichandran Ashwin and swearing at the umpire as well. When you hear about Justin Langer talking about lines and not crossing lines, I mean, I'd sort of start to get triggered and think back to bad old days. But the fact that Australia have set themselves up there, this standard of behaviour, we saw it as well in the documentary, The Test, which of course painted them in this warm fuzzy light. We all thought better of them from that. But have they put themselves up on too much of a pedestal, do you think?
I don't think they had any choice but to make a really public commitment to being better, because in 2018 they were, like the Australian cricket team, the men's team, as very much opposed to the women's team, was pretty well despised by a lot of people in Australia. The anger and disappointment at having players being caught cheating on the field was immense, and it was national and it was palpable. And I don't think they had any option but to commit publicly to saying we will be much better. We will make that commitment. And that was something that Tim Payne kicked off himself, before his first test as captain in Johannesburg, before he'd had any sort of direction from higher up or whatever it might be. He was the one who came out and said, we haven't been good enough and we need to be better. So I don't think they had any alternative, really. And what that means is that the pressure will be on them all the time not to slip. And that is as it should be in a lot of ways, because that means that results in that area will actually come or are more likely to come because they do have that public commitment. And I think it's really heartening in a lot of ways that Tim Payne's episode where he's gobbing off at an opposition player, if you went back even 5 years or, let alone 15 or 20 years, the Australian team would have been closing ranks and saying, there was no problem with that. Grown men out.
Oh, we just lost.
Whereas this time...
Are you still there, Jeff? Oh, you are.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, you just dropped off momentarily, but you're back.
You were just saying grown men.
Yeah, I was saying that there were all the usual excuses they used to use, that it's a sport for tough men and words will be said. This time they said, okay, we shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done that. Tim Payne said he shouldn't have done that. And I think that's quite heartening because that would not have happened previously and it can happen now. And I think that the especially tone-deaf bit from Payne was that you've had Indian players over 3 different days saying that they've been abused from the crowd, and particularly in that context, for him to be getting stuck into one of those players was really poor decision making.
I think, Jeff, looking back at the test in Sydney, it was a great game of cricket, and that's kind of been overlooked. And I think because of all these issues that we're talking about, the abuse from the stands, and then everything that happened on day 5, I think that's why it's all been blown up as it has been.
Yeah, and it's sad when you see great matches. It's sad when you see. We should be talking about that Indian batting performance days later, rather than talking about what was said or what wasn't between players days later, because that was one for the ages, and they deserve all the credit that they can get for it.
It feels quite sad as well that we're talking about abuse from the crowd when there aren't crowds in most places watching live sport. But Tuffers, I don't know why I'm asking you this question particularly, but do you have moments out on the boundary in Australia cricket grounds, perchance, when you might have had some slightly less than polite remarks?
Well, yes,
on swear
a few
at you,
occasions.
Phil?
Well, I think they did, but it kind of toughens you up a little bit. I'm going back to 15 or 20 years ago that Jeff was talking about, when you kind of got to get on with it a little bit, and it was part and parcel. But one that was sort of like avoidable was, I can remember I dropped a catch or something and walked out to the Adelaide Oval, and as I've walked out there, we're in the middle, we've lost a toss and we're bowling first, so we're in the huddle, and as we've sort of broken off, there was this sort of like 50-foot banner being unveiled down at fine leg, and it was the Phil Tufnell Fielding Academy. So everyone's had a little bit of a chortle at it, and everyone's waving at me and throwing balls up in the air and dropping and everything. And then where does my captain Graham Gooch put me to field? Fine leg. He said, go down there. I had to go down there, and I stood there in front of them all day. They could not believe their luck. Can't you just put me at fine third man? No, you go and stand right in front of them. Thank you, Skip.
Did you ever go to the Skip? Did you go to Gooch and say, come on, Gooch, give us a bit of a breather?
Give us a little bit of a breather, but all you batsmen, of course, you're all sitting there in the slips and in the ring field. You don't have to cop it, all us bowlers have to get. But listen, I enjoyed every minute of it. And listen, the racial abuse is totally out of order, and I can understand everyone, being, very upset about all that. But listen, it was only a bit of good old-fashioned digging, you know what I mean? And if anything, it kind of passed the time a little bit,
Michael, did you ever have a bowler come to you and say, "Don't put me down there, Skip, please"?
No, I had a few fielders who didn't want to go in fielding position because they knew the catches were going to be going to that area, and I was one of them. I could captain myself to make sure I didn't go down to the catching zone. But no, I was very clever early in my career that I kind of made sure I fielded in the inner circle to get myself out of the odd bit of trouble. Playing for Yorkshire, I used to go and field on the boundary at Old Trafford and get absolute pelters all the time. But, it's the era that we played in. You just had to take it. I'm pretty sure my captain at Yorkshire, David Byas, the strong farmer from Scarborough, if I'd have ever said to David, I don't want to go and field out there at cover point, I'm getting a bit of abuse, he'd have walked me down there himself and said, you are staying down there, young man, and you'll stay down there all afternoon. So it's just different eras.
Look, Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeff,
Cheers,
for
Jeff.
being on the programme. Go well in Brisbane, and hope it's a fantastic final Test match. I'm sure it will be. That was Jeff Lemon. So we've got a double bill if you want it. You've got late night Australia against India from 11:30 if you want to stay up all night. Then followed from 4:30 in the morning. Pull an all-nighter. Why not?
All-nighter.
We don't need sleep, do we? So what's going to happen on day 2 in Gaul, guys? Final word from the two of you.
England are going to bat pretty decent, get a lead of probably they're going to get to 250, 270 or somewhere around there, and then put the pressure right back on Sri Lanka, and they must do better, otherwise it's going to be over in 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, the skipper's not got a century. You mentioned, Ellie, early in the show that the skipper's not got a century for quite a while now. I expect him to go big.